Henry Heckelbeck and the Great Frog Escape. Chapter 1. The Frog King. Chug-a-wump, chug-a-wump-wump. Henry heard the frog. Now he just had to find it. He peeked in between the tall grasses and scanned the lily pads. Chug-a-wump! Henry slowly looked from side to side. Then he gasped. There, sitting on a large lily pad, was an enormous bullfrog. Whoa, Henry thought. This must be the Frog King of Brewster Creek. Henry crept from behind the grasses and stepped into the shallow water. He could feel the cold water through his rubber boots. I have to catch you, Frog King, Henry whispered. My friends won't believe it. He took another small step forward and raised his net. The frog didn't budge from his lily pad throne. It was going to work. Henry was going to catch that frog. He was about to bring the net down when somebody shouted, Hey, Henry! Plop! The Frog King hopped into the water and escaped. Murgh! Henry cried. Dudley splashed up the creek toward his friend. Did you get anything? Henry chucked the net onto the bank. No, you scared it away by yelling. Scared what away? Asked Dudley. Henry folded his arms. My king-sized frog. Dudley covered his mouth with his hand. Oops, sorry, dude. I didn't catch any either. Max splashed up to the boys, held out her bucket and cheered. Well, I got 3. The boys groaned and looked in the bucket. Her frogs were small, but they were frogs. Nice going, Max, said Henry. Then his stomach growled. Both Dudley and Max heard it and laughed. Did you swallow a frog? Max asked. Henry rubbed his hand in a circle on his stomach. No, I'm just super hungry, he said. Want to have lunch? The friends agreed. Max walked to the edge of the creek and tipped her bucket on its side. Plip, plop, plip. Henry watched all of Max's frogs hop into the water and wondered what would have happened if his frog hadn't gotten away. Chapter 2. Hop, 2, 3, 4. Did you catch a frog? Asked Mom, who had lunch ready on a picnic table. Henry sighed and grabbed a turkey sandwich. Almost, he said. Max popped a grape in her mouth and said, Frogs can be very slippery, you know. I hear they scare easily, too, said Dudley as he pulled open his chip bag. Henry gave that joke a fake laugh. Hardy har. When the friends finished eating, Max pulled out a deck of cards. The cards had a picture of a frog sitting on a lily pad. Above the frog, it said, I just really like frogs, okay? So who wants to play Go Frog? Asked Max. It's the same as Go Fish, only with frogs. Dudley's hand shot up. I do. Henry slid off the bench and grabbed his net and bucket. Thanks, but I'm going to try and catch a real frog one more time before we go. Better hop to it, Mom said. It looks like rain, and I don't want to get stuck out here in a storm. Okay, said Henry, as he headed for the creek. You've totally got this, Dudley shouted. Henry walked back to the same spot. He pulled back the grasses. No frogs in here. He checked the tops of the lily pads. No frogs out there either. Ah, well, he said, turning to leave. Chug-a-wump. Henry whirled back around. Sitting on the bank beside him was the Frog King. Well, hello, your royal frogginess, Henry said. Chug-a-wump-wump, the Frog King answered. Henry bent over and gently wrapped his hands around the plump frog. He lifted the frog to his face. You're a beauty, Henry told him. Want to meet my friends? Henry was about to lower the frog into his bucket when the car horn blared. Honk, honk, honk! The sound frightened Henry, who let go of the frog and watched it hop away. Henry, we're leaving, Mom called. Henry looked at his magnificent frog. The frog looked back at Henry. Chug-a-wump, it croaked. I'm sorry, I have to go, Henry said. Then he ran to the car, packed his frogging gear in the trunk, and hopped in the back seat. Little did he know, something else had hopped into the car, too. Boing, boing, boing. Chapter 3. Kerthunk. "Let's go to my room," Henry said when they got home. The friends ran upstairs. Max plunked onto a beanbag chair and sighed. "I miss my frogs," she said, shutting her eyes. "I can almost hear them saying they miss me too." Max pretended to listen for frogs. "Chug-a-wump," croaked a real frog. "Wow, you have a great imagination, Max," Dudley said, "because I just heard a frog croak too." Boing! Suddenly, the Frog King leapt onto Henry's bed. "You did hear a frog," said Henry, "but it's not one of Max's frogs. It's my frog." Dudley and Max ran over. "Wow-wee, whoa! How'd that humongous frog get on your bed?" cried Dudley. Max wedged herself between the boys so she could see. "It's the size of all three of my frogs in one," she said. Henry smiled proudly. "Meet the Frog King of Brewster Creek." Dudley and Max looked at each other with wide eyes. "Dude, how'd you even get this frog in here?" asked Dudley. Henry puffed his chest out just a little. "A good spy never reveals her secrets." Max frowned. "So, in other words, you don't know?" Henry unpuffed his chest. "Yep, I have absolutely no idea," he admitted. "It must have followed me home." "Well, that is one smart frog," said Dudley with a bow. "May I be the first to welcome you to Henry's bedroom, your royal hoppingness." Henry laughed. "He does look kingly, right?" Max took a closer look. "He does seem very old and wise." "Chug-a-wump," croaked the frog, and the kids burst into laughter. It was almost as if the frog understood what Max had said. "How will you get the Frog King back to the creek?" asked Dudley. Henry shrugged. It's raining now, so we can bring him back tomorrow, I guess," he suggested. "What about tonight?" asked Max. Henry placed the Frog King in his bucket on top of his desk. "He'll be safe in there tonight," he said. "Besides, how hard can it be to babysit a frog?" Suddenly, a new sound came from Henry's desk. Kerthunk! The bucket had fallen over. What just happened?" asked Henry. Said Max. "I think the Frog King just escaped." Chapter 4. Better Get Hoppin'. "Where did he go?" Henry asked. Dudley and Max looked around the room, but the Frog King was nowhere to be found. "That is one sneaky frog," said Dudley. "First, he escaped Brewster Creek. Then he hitched a ride to your house, and now he's given us the slip." "Guys, it's time to conduct a missing frog investigation," said Max. "Spread out. Henry, check under the furniture. Dudley, search the closet. I'll take the bookshelves." The three spies began to investigate. Henry dropped to his knees and looked under the bed. Dudley looked in all four corners of the closet. "No amphibians in here," Dudley called out. Max pulled books from the bookshelves. Thump, slap, thwack. She stacked them in a pile. "No frogs in between the books," she called out. Henry pulled his head out from under his desk. "No frogs under the furniture either," he said. "Where else could it be?" "Chug-a-wump-wump," croaked the frog. Dudley pointed toward Henry's bedroom door. "Looks like your royal frog is about to check out of the Henry Hotel." The Frog King was sitting by the door. It stared back at the kids with wide eyes and a froggy smile. "Wait!" Henry cried. But it was too late. The Frog King had already hopped into the hall and started to go downstairs. "We have a runner!" Max cried as all three friends raced for the door. Or should I say, a hopper. Chapter 5. Hip Hop. As Henry raced after the frog, the thoughts in his head raced even faster. What if the frog pees on the carpet? What if my parents see the frog in the house? What if someone accidentally steps on the frog? Henry blazed down the stairs while Dudley and Max stood on guard at the top of the stairs in case the Frog King tried to sneak back. "Henry, is that you?" called Mom from the kitchen. Henry and the frog froze on the bottom stair. "Yep, it's just me and nobody else," said Henry. His voice sounded weirdly high-pitched. Your teacher, Miss Mizzle, stopped by, said Mom. Tell your friends to come down for snacks and a visit. Normally, Henry would love a surprise visit from his teacher, but not in the middle of a full-on frog chase. Henry thought fast. I need to change into a fancy shirt, he said as he reached down and wrapped his hands around the frog's plump body. Gotcha, he whispered as he heard his mom's shoes click toward the hallway. Henry hid the frog behind his back. You look fine, said Mom, waving Henry into the kitchen. Come say hello. Henry held the squirming frog tightly as he walked over and poked his head around the corner. Hi, Miss Mizzle. Nice to see you, he said. Let me go get Dudley and Max, okay? Then Henry backed away before Miss Mizzle or his mom could say anything. But as soon as he was out of their view, the frog sprang from his hands like a wet bar of soap. Hip-hop, hippity-hop. Henry watched as the Frog King hopped right into the kitchen. Chapter 6. Come back here! Oh no, I'm in froggy trouble now, Henry thought. But maybe there was one way to help, his magic book. Henry closed his eyes and made a wish. When Henry opened his eyes, there was a shimmering globe behind a potted tree in the living room. Henry charged toward the light, grabbed his magic book, and ducked behind the tree. Pop! The medallion released from the cover and came to rest around his neck. Then the book opened, and pages fluttered until they stopped on a spell for finding things. The comeback spell. Has something important gone missing? Like your soccer cleats? Your homework? Or perhaps your pet has disappeared? Panic no more. This spell will bring back anything that's lost. Ingredients. 1 flashlight. Something that looks like your missing item. 1 drop of glue. Switch on the flashlight and pile the ingredients on top of each other. Hold your medallion in one hand and place the other hand over the mix. Chant the following spell. The magic search goes round and round. All lost items can be found. Bring my missing blank to me on the count of 1, 2, 3. Note, stay focused on the magic cloud as well as the missing object, or the spell could grow out of control. Henry tiptoed into his mom's office. He found a flashlight, glue, and a frog sticker. Then he took everything back behind the potted tree. He switched on the flashlight and placed it on the frog sticker. Then he squeezed a drop of glue on top and chanted the spell. Poof! A cloud of magic appeared and swooshed away in search of the frog. It left a trail of sparkles in the air. Whoa! Henry said, I love magic. Chapter 7. Totally terrified. The magic cloud flew toward the kitchen. Focus on the magic cloud and the frog, Henry reminded himself. Focus on the magic cloud and the frog. Henry peeked in as the magic cloud swirled around his mom's legs, which were under the kitchen table along with the frog. Gaboing! The frog leapt into the magic cloud like a baseball bouncing into a glove. Henry muffled a laugh, even though he was still totally terrified. He had to stay focused on the cloud. He watched it float toward the ceiling above Mom and Miss Mizzle. Luckily, they were talking and didn't notice. Come back to me, Henry thought, keeping his eyes on the magic cloud. And the cloud listened. It flew toward Henry. The spell was going perfectly. Until Dad opened the back door. Wham! The door smacked the magic cloud and the frog, batting them into the living room. I'm home, Dad said. Henry flattened himself against the wall and waited for a reaction from the kitchen. But the conversation continued normally. Henry peeked into the kitchen just to make sure. Yep, all was well. Wow, that was way too close, Henry thought. Then he turned around and looked in the living room and knew his little frog problem had grown out of control. Murgh. Chapter 8. A Riveting Tale. The good news was that there was no longer one frog in the living room. The bad news was that there were now hundreds of frogs, and they were doing what frogs do best, hopping. They hopped on the sofa. They hopped on the coffee table. They hopped on the windowsills, on the bookshelves, and in the fireplace. Henry put both hands on top of his head and looked around the room. What was he going to do? Then the magic cloud swooped back to Henry. Can you please bring back the one Frog King? He asked. The magic cloud nodded, then swooshed through the room. It gathered all the frogs and turned them back into one perfectly plump frog. Then the cloud laid the frog onto Henry's waiting hands and disappeared in a shower of sparkles. Poof! Ahem, said a voice from behind Henry. It was Mom, standing with her arms folded and one eyebrow raised. This better not be what I think it is. Uh-oh, thought Henry, but before he could explain, the frog leapt from his hands again. Spring! Dudley, Max, Henry yelled. We're going to need your help. Henry's friend zoomed down the stairs, blocking the frog's escape. But now it hopped back to the kitchen. Catch it, Mom cried. Henry closed in on the frog as it leapt toward Miss Mizzle. But Miss Mizzle was fast. She grabbed a dish towel and gently scooped up the frog. Gotcha, she said. Max held Henry's bucket in front of Miss Mizzle. The teacher gently placed the frog on the bottom. Then Henry covered the bucket with plastic wrap and poked breathing holes with a fork. Well, Henry Heckelbeck, said Mom, I'm sure you have a riveting tale to share with all of us. Chapter 9. Smart Frog. Henry shared his frog tale, except for the part about casting a magical spell. He told everyone how he'd spied the Frog King, caught him, and let him go. He explained how the Frog King had somehow followed him home and up to his bedroom. Then Henry braced himself for the worst punishment of his life. But nobody shook a head or waved a finger. Instead, his dad thoughtfully stroked his chin with his hand. That is one smart frog, he finally said. Everybody in the room nodded in agreement. How did he even get in the car? Dudley asked. Or up the stairs, added Max. Mom walked over to Henry and wrapped her arms around him. I wish you'd felt you could have told me about your wonderful frog, she said. Remember, I'm always here to help, especially when things hop out of control. Henry shrugged. I thought you'd get mad if you saw a frog in the house. Plus, I really thought I could handle it on my own. Mom patted Henry on the shoulder. Believe it or not, frogs don't freak me out, she said. Everyone laughed. So, what do we do now? Asked Henry. This frog clearly doesn't want to live in the creek. Or in this bucket. Miss Mizzle clasped her hands together. You know, she began, we really should have a class pet. Henry, Dudley, and Max squealed at the same time. I love that idea, said Henry. May I bring the frog to school tomorrow? Absolutely, said Miss Mizzle. Just make sure you don't lose it between now and then. Looks like we're going to have a new classmate, said Max. Nice going, Henry. Henry grinned from ear to ear. Max may have caught 3 frogs at the creek, but Henry had caught the new class pet. Wow. Chapter 10. The Frog Bog. Mom drove Henry to school early to deliver the frog. Everybody gathered around the new glass tank in the classroom. It had a little pond, dirt, plants, and rocks. Sitting on top of the biggest rock was the Frog King. He even has his very own swimming pool, said Dudley. Also known as a frog bog, said Henry. The class all buzzed with pure excitement. Miss Mizzle introduced the class pet and told the adventure of how the frog had followed Henry home and tried to make a great frog escape by hopping all around the house. And now for the best part, Miss Mizzle said, and paused. Henry gulped. He had seen the magical moment of 1,000,000 frogs. Was she going to tell Henry's secret to the entire class? Henry gulped. Had she seen the magical moment of 1,000,000 frogs? Was she going to tell Henry's secret to the entire class? Instead, Miss Mizzle said, it's time to vote on a name for our new class pet. The class rushed to their seats, and Miss Mizzle passed out scrap paper. The kids whispered and giggled as they thought of names for the class frog. Henry quietly wrote down a few names, the Frog King, Kermit, Pickles, and Dumpling. Miss Mizzle let Henry collect the names in a basket. I'll write the names on the board," Miss Mizzle said, "and then we'll vote for the one we like best." She unfolded the slips of paper and began to laugh. "We won't need to vote after all," she said. "You've each agreed on a name already." Henry looked around the room. "But I didn't agree on a name," he thought. "What is she talking about?" "On the count of 3, let's say the name together," said Miss Mizzle. 1, 2, 3, Henry the Second! The class shouted as they gathered around Henry to clap and cheer. "Jug-a-wump wump," croaked the frog in agreement. And that made Henry the happiest, hoppiest kid in the whole school.